Welcome, movie fans. This is Reel to Reel, your home for an ever-evolving discussion of film in all of its forms. I'm the Mayor.
And I'm KP. Today we're going to be starting a new series, one we will affectionately call And the Winner Is. This is going to be our exploration into the Oscars, and more specifically, Best Picture. The Mayor and I are really big Oscar appreciators, and we say that specifically against movie fandom or Oscar fandom. We're like you. We don't actually think that the Oscars always get it right. We don't always like all the winners. We don't like it when things lose, but we do appreciate not just the prestige, but the recognition that the Oscars has indelibly tied itself to when it comes to cinema. The recognition of art and the award and respect that's given to being an Oscar winner is something that we really find something indelible to, something that we appreciate in cinema. And we wanted to explore those things in depth. And we thought Best Picture is the best place to do it. We get to talk about, the other nominees as we discuss the winners, and we get to discuss, obviously, the great ones, and we also get to discuss the terrible ones, the questionable ones, the arguable ones. And we decided to kick this one off as we start this series with something that we know is recent, so that people can at least recognize it, something that has opinions, and something that we thought would be really fun. Because we actually remember this movie when we were younger. And that is 2005's Crash, directed by Paul Haggis.
Yeah, this movie, when I watched it younger, I remember thinking it was a good film. It was profound for me when I was younger. I watched it around middle school. You're a bit older in high school. And everyone has looked back at Crash and said, without a doubt, it's one of the worst films ever. For the people who are not fans of the Oscar, this is like one of their favorite weapons to denounce how bad the Oscars are. And I always went, it can't be that bad. Like, it obviously didn't deserve the win, especially when we talk about later what it went up against. But is it really that bad of a film? I haven't rewatched it since I was young. So finally being able to rewatch it, I can 100% say this did not deserve a win in any capacity. Yeah, this was not a pleasant watch to get through. Crash is a film that has not aged well. It's too blunt of a film. It's gross in a lot of forms, and we're gonna break it down for you. KP, what are some of your initial thoughts of Crash?
It's terrible in so many senses of the word, and to say that is hard considering the talent that's in the film. Paul Haggis is a competent screenwriter, a doable director. There's nothing wrong with him. There are worse writers and worse directors. The cast is a beautiful, dynamic group of actors and actresses from ages and ethnicities that play wonderfully. It's just a bad movie. I don't really know what else to say, how to encapsulate it. There aren't any thoughts beyond how could we, both as a community of movie watchers, how do we look at this movie at all and argue this? And I talk about us, you and I together. Yeah. How did we like this movie 15 years ago? We're ashamed of ourselves. Because obviously we were young, but I know that there was an argument of just, well, there's something to take away from it. Racism is bad. And the movie is, shining a light on that aspect that we can't ignore. And there has to be something commendable about that, right? Yeah. And what I said, yes. This movie, absolutely not. No, not at all.
Yeah, this is a kind of movie that I feel like, yet again, as middle school me, I can write about racism and just be like, look, see, racism is bad. And that's what this film feels like, because there's no subtlety to this film. Racism is already a tough subject to tackle for filmmaking, but you have to come at it from all angles. There's a lot on the spectrum of racism and how it affects people and how it's delivered. Crash is just 1 to 100 the whole time. It's just a constant punch in the gut. These people say the most obscene, worst things possible at all times.
I would have said you were Mexican, but I don't think it would have pissed her off as much.
Yeah, what is your name?
Shaniqua Johnson.
Shaniqua, big fucking surprise that is.
And that's not the full aspect of racism. So while you're watching this film, you just feel constantly drained because every character, every interaction that you come through is just nonstop. Ugh.
Folks, drive safe now, huh?
Oh, someone's gonna drop this terrible bomb. Someone's gonna say this. There's no subtlety here. Nope. And what sucks is that Paul Haggis came up with this great idea of it's in LA, a melting pot of ethnicities and groups, classes, and how they all intertwine in the city, and how, sometimes we crash into each other. Get it?
That's the name of the movie!
That's the name of the movie. So when you take the essence of the film, there could be something really deep and profound there, but Paul Haggis instead went to the most over-the-top, melodramatic, just nothing just of meat there. It's just loud and abrasive and gross.
It plays out poorly from start to finish. You know, it's from the get-go. The opening scene after the long drawn-out credits and a very cheesy and yet, you know, commendable monologue by Don Cheadle. The movie comes out, you know, obviously 4 or 5 years after 9/11, and it's a conversation about a Middle Eastern father and his daughter going to a gun shop to buy a gun for him, who is a store owner in LA. Completely common scenario where someone needs to protect themselves. And what transpires is the most, like you said, pedal to the floor reaction of racism. You know, just especially, you know, at the time as we're in the war on terror, just calling someone, you know,
Yo, Osama, plan the jihad on your own time. You're liberating my country, now I'm flying 747s into your mud huts and incinerating your friends. Get the fuck out of my...
this is the kind of rhetoric that derives hatred. And not to the people that it's deriving to. It causes hatred within our community, within our culture. It creates pockets. It creates divide by giving these voices a place to speak without any true commentary or condemnation towards their actions. But the profound question of can we change it is never at the forefront of this film.
And we get to see all these intertwining characters, and almost all of them are terrible in some way, shape, or form, or they have just terrible tendencies. The only good character is Michael Pena, who is a character that gets racially profiled in the film, but he himself is just a normal stand-up dude, as I think this film should have more of, which is just regular people sprinkled in with terrible people. But this film is just layered with just crappy people. And it's a shame because there's a lot of great actors here. We have Don Cheadle, we have Matt Dillon, to some of the younger actors who are rising at the time, like Ryan Phillippe, Terrence Howard, and Thandie Newton, who is, you know, one of the shining moments of the film. But every character gets their bit parts, but sadly none of them really stick in terms of like having some kind of impact. All that you just go, oh, that's gross. Oh, that's gross. So to start breaking down some of the good about the film, some of the performances are in fact good. Thandie Newton's performance is the one that is definitely standout. We agree. She's a character that gets sexually assaulted by a police officer played by Matt Dillon, and then later on the film gets into a car crash, which is one of the most famous scenes, actually one of the best edited moments of the movie.
That's what works. She is the shameful reality of what racism and abuse do to people. And she plays that really well against Terrence Howard's more subtle performance of the husband that feels insecure to stand up for it.
And Thandie Newton's performance is fantastic. You know, she's only getting the recognition more so now thanks to Westworld, but she's had that acting chops her whole career. She's a immensely talented actress. And sadly, KP, was she nominated?
I'm sorry, what?
Was she nominated?
No,
right? She's the most standout,
no, she
right?
wasn't. No,
but
she wasn't.
But KP, she gets great moments.
No, but you know who gets a better moment?
Who gets better?
Matt Dillon.
He does.
Matt Dillon gets better moments. Why? Because he's a terrible person.
Me, that's fine. I'm a prick.
And not just he's a terrible person, but Matt Dillon is brave enough to portray the terrible person unequivocally, unabashedly, and we get to feel sorry for him. And why do we feel sorry for him, Mayor?
Well, see, the problem is that while Matt Dillon's character is a terrible cop who sexually assaults somebody, constantly throws racial slurs, he has a father with health problems.
I have a father. My father could be sick. Yeah. I never thought about it like that.
And that might make you angry if you do, so that might lead you to maybe doing terrible things. See, and that's the problem of the film, is that every character is just a coin. It's just one side's completely terrible and the other side is just good. There's just nothing more to it. Every character is 2D in this film. Matt Dillon is just apparently bad through the whole film. They try to make you go, but he has problems at home. But there's no justification.
Exactly.
There's no ramifications for a lot of people's racism in this film. Almost none. Which is just nuts. Like you said, we're trying to say something that is as terrible as racism, showing people to their face of all the shapes and sizes of it, but instead it's just people yelling insults for, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then just calling it a day.
As we talk about the praising of good performances, you know, as much as Terrence Howard is a very commendable force of acting, the character he portrays is very short-sighted in terms of how it's written. It's not Terrence Howard's performance, it's the idea that the character, what happens to him. His shame brings him to feel guilty about it, coming face to face with the anger over not doing something, and finds himself in a standoff with cops. Not just disagreeing, getting out of his car when he shouldn't, yelling at the cops, calling them names, you know, using foul language as the cops have guns drawn at him.
Don't come any closer, down on your knees. Fuck you, man. What are you gonna do? Pull the fucking trigger then. On your knees now. You get on your knees and suck my motherfucking dick while you down there.
And for us as the audience, we know he has a gun on him. Nothing in this movie plays out as real life. It just transcends as something cinematically, emotionally manipulative, and it's so abhorrently obvious.
Yeah, Crash is trying to capture what it's like to live in LA with all these different groups of people, but instead it crashes in its own little separate world. One of the most famous scenes from the film, which involves Michael Pena and his daughter, a Middle Eastern character that you mentioned earlier, the shop owner, comes and goes to shoot him after they had an argument earlier in the film about what Michael Pena's job is. Without going into too much detail, he walks up to shoot Michael Pena in broad daylight. He goes to shoot him, and Michael Pena's daughter runs out. He picks her up, and he shoots the gun, but it's filled with blanks, and he was about to murder a man, and then almost technically a girl, and there's no ramifications to his character. Nothing happens for him in that suburban neighborhood. Michael Pena and his daughter and his wife just walk away from the scene, and just the shop owner goes back and kind of has like a little breakdown, but it amounts all to nothing. And yet again, there's nothing that happens. Yep. And at the end of the film, Ludacris's character...
Oh, goodness. Understand that Ludacris is almost the more poetically observant and vocal character to call out what racism inhabits the lifeblood of LA. He's the outspoken man that says, you know, this town's racist. You know, I got this white lady, you know, the first time you interact with him is when Sandra Bullock and her husband, played by Brendan Fraser, who's the DA in the movie, are walking home from dinner to go to their car. And he watches as Sandra Bullock's character gets a little closer to her husband. You know, we find out it's most likely because she sees two black men walking her way. Yeah, that's racially assumptive. Yeah. And Ludacris calls her out on it.
Right, she's cold. She got colder as soon as she saw us, though.
And what are Ludacris and his buddy? But criminals. They are. They're carjackers. And that's the very thing they do 2 seconds later. It's supposed to be like a poignant joke. As a black person, I find it insulting, the concept that like we're so well aware of the racism that it's inhabiting our cities and our towns and our neighborhoods. And yet, you know, the idea that like we're culpable of it and aware of it and like we embrace it. Like, what does that even mean? And so, obviously, you know, Ludacris goes on a journey of coming face to face with a lot of heinous things, and luckily, by the skin of his teeth, getting out of it time and time again, until the very end of the movie, where he finds a van with keys stuck in it from a man he...
End of problem.
Takes him to the hospital, and you don't think anything of it. You're like, oh, lucky them, like he's not dead. Then you find out that he's going to cash a check with his wife. And why is he going to cash a check, Mayor?
Because the van is filled with illegal immigrants, and they're all chained to the back of this van. And so Ludacris goes to turn it in, and the guy who he turns it into is willing to buy the van and the people inside.
I'll take the van.
They're chained to the van,
so I'll take them too.
Ludacris decides to do the right thing, and he drives to Chinatown in the middle of the night, opens the back of the van with all these people chained, and just takes them out of the van, gives them a few dollars, says some of the most racist things he possibly can to them.
buy everybody chop suey, you understand?
And they don't even understand him, and he just lets them go. See? He's a good guy.
He's a great guy.
And yet again, they're in the middle of a crowded street, and people being pulled out in chains.
You can
and
hear the chain dragging out of the van onto the floor. If I'm walking and I hear that, I'm going to turn and look.
It's just, and a mass of people coming out, and no one bats an eye. And yet again, that's just the problem with Crash. It feels it's telling this very believable and real story, but it's just in its own confound little messy LA story. None of it feels real. Every character is just a racial caricature that is, like I said, just half made. Yep. No character feels fully fleshed out, and the only time this film actually gets into a proper discussion about racism is with the great character actor William Fichtner,
I love William Fichtner.
Who deserves more love as it is, but specifically in this film.
I remember that scene always kind of didn't hit when I was younger. It was just like, okay, we're just talking about it. But as we watch it, that's the one moment in the movie we both were just like, damn, that's good. Like, that's a good, meaty moment. Don Cheadle's detective has a case where an undercover white officer shoots an unarmed black man in his car, and we don't think anything of it, except we find out that the black man is a cop. Oh no! And furthermore, the white undercover officer has a record of killing unarmed black men.
Internal Affairs says this Conklin has 2 suspicious shootings on his record. Both black men, both times he was cleared, but only just.
This is now his 3rd black man that he has shot. But coincidentally, lo and behold, Don Cheadle and his partner find in the spare tire, the tire filled with money and drugs.
When the coroner's report comes back tomorrow, it's gonna say that Detective Lewis was coked out of his head.
Was he in the right? Was the circumstances in which he potentially killed this man valid? But no, that's not the question right now, because it's about the optics. It's about how the DA, Brendan Fraser's character, wants to spin this to both bolster the community, to make them feel safer, and bolster his numbers to look like a DA who's hard on crime and also not prejudiced, not a racist. I'm a man that understands the people, even though obviously earlier the night before he was carjacked by black people. And he even has an angry, frustrated moment about being, why did they have to be black?
Fuck! Why do these guys have to be black?
That's not the conversation that this movie's trying to have. It doesn't give the characters enough poignant moments. So Don Cheadle comes to the office to basically lay the case out for the DA, but they want to make sure that the detective is on the same page. And Don Cheadle can't sit with it. And William Fichtner is the spin doctor, basically. And it plays out so well because it's the theme that the movie should be. But this is the only scene that inhabits this theme, which is the conversation that racism is gray. It causes destruction while it's trying to find its footing. And Fichtner plays it very eloquently as he challenges Don Cheadle's character with, you're absolutely right. You're right. The guy, the black cop's dirtied on the take. But wouldn't it look better if we just got rid of an obviously bad cop as well?
What are you, the fucking defender of all things white? We're talking about a white man who shot 3 black men. And you're arguing with me that maybe we're not being fair to him? You know what, maybe you're right, maybe you're right. Maybe Lewis did provoke this, and maybe he got exactly what was coming to him. Or maybe, stoned or not, just being a black man in the valley was enough to get him killed. There was no one there to see who shot first, so there was no way to know, which means we could get this wrong.
And that's a fantastic point to be made in the conversation of race. A fantastic one.
It is, and that's what, like you said earlier, that's what the film should be about. But instead what we get is an almost 2-hour film of just people yelling at the top of their lungs, saying the worst things ever. And I think that's how this film ends up winning Best Picture in that time, because everyone who watched this, especially the older crowd stuff, goes, well, I'm not like those people. I'm not like these terrible people, so I'm okay. I'm not that racist.
It's white
I'm
guilt.
not racist
This
at
movie
all.
is an Oscar winner of white guilt.
It is, and that's what it feels like, you know, because it's telling a modern story with you know, they say a modern problem, and people get to go, well, thankfully I'm not like that. You know, racism has been defeated with the film Crash in 2005, and of course it's just not the case. This film feels like a Lifetime movie. It is just not well presented in any way, shape, or form. There's no subtlety. There's no meat. It's just exactly what it is. It's a crash. It's a car crash that you have to sit through and watch.
Yeah, and it hurts. It sucks.
It hurts, yeah. And so the fact that this film was nominated, let alone gets the win.
Against what it won against.
Well, yeah.
We didn't even go through that.
Yeah, well, that's what we're getting to.
The movie, you know, won the Oscar in 2005. It's the nominees for Best Picture. My goodness. Munich, Steven Spielberg's observation on the Jewish response to the terrorist attack on the Munich Olympics. Capote, another true story depiction of Truman Capote's journey into writing his American classic In Cold Blood. Good Night and Good Luck, a profoundly relevant film about news and manipulation of the truth to service greed and power in the government during the McCarthy era. You know, directed, written by George Clooney, starring a wonderful David Strathairn. Wonderful film, told in black and white. And then, of course, but considered arguably one of the greatest, most important films, Brokeback Mountain. You know, you may have your opinions or feelings about it, however you stand, we don't care. It's a piece of art. It's a fantastic depiction of love, of the hardships in which groups, specifically the gay community, especially at that time, have to fight over a love that is not acceptable, that can get them killed, and struggling with the internal ramifications of owning who they are as people, as 2 cowboys find love on the mountains of Montana, I believe, and how they struggle to be in love while hiding this love. I mean, come on!
Yeah.
Told beautifully. You know, Ang Lee directing. You know,
it's his masterpiece,
and it's his first Oscar win for director, rightfully so. The cinematography is incredible. Freaking, you know, Heath Ledger, Jake Gyllenhaal, you know, Michelle Williams, Anne Hathaway. You know, these are great actors, and these were young actors too. We know them as household names 15 years later. You know, some of them have won Oscars after that film. But that movie is such a huge point for so many reasons, both as a film, but also what the topic's about. And all these great films lose to this.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the movies that didn't get nominated.
The Academy had 5 choices, and 4 of them could have been right. One in particular, much better than the others, and they still made the wrong choice. But like I say, yeah, Crash shouldn't have been nominated. That year we also had Memoirs of a Geisha, which was nominated for a handful of technicals, beautiful film. You had David Cronenberg's A History of Violence, which is one of the best thrillers from the 2000s, and it won was accessible David Cronenberg films. It's a fantastic film. And you also have something a bit more like off the cuff, like Terrence Malick's
The New World.
The New World,
Yeah.
which wasn't so well received, but it's a technical marvel and a beautiful film. And none of those got nominated. It was Crash. And it's not like Crash was being nominated across the board from all the other awards either. It was Brokeback Mountain that was winning everything.
Yep.
So Crash somehow was able to weasel its way, get the nomination, and win. But not just win picture, but also win for editing and for screenplay. Editing, okay. Screenplay, no way in hell should have won. This film shouldn't have been nominated for those things. The only thing I'm okay with is its original song nomination. I'm okay for Matt Dillon, even though it's like the classic Oscar choice of choosing the loudest or most like evil, vile role.
Yeah, the more deserving.
Yeah.
Being Thandie Newton.
Yeah, Thandie Newton is what should have been the other nomination. That should have been it. And so it's just so bizarre looking back and just seeing that Crash won over all these films. And while Brokeback Mountain, Good Night and Good Luck, Munich, all these films have aged so well, Crash aged like milk the following day, it feels like.
Yeah, that night.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We are honestly admitting to ourselves ignorantly that we didn't see it when we were younger. We looked at it and be like, but it's saying good things. But we can absolutely say with much certainty and with a declaration, it's like this movie's bad.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's a manipulation, of like I said, people's emotions, and for people that don't want to look into film deeper, they just go, this is a film about racism. Racism is bad. We all agree this should win. And the Academy makes this wrong, terrible choice at least once a decade.
That's right.
And I'm afraid they're going to keep doing this. This last decade we had Green Book, which is kind of the same thing. It feels like a pat in the back. See, racism is bad. I'm not like that. Crash did it the following decade. And then you have just other myriads of controversial films from Weinstein's push for Shakespeare in Love in the 90s, and then the 80s. You also had Driving Miss Daisy, which is just like Green Book. And it's just the Academy keeps repeating these processes, and so that's the worrying thing. As appreciators, we want the best art to be given the most love. But every few years something like this happens, and it's hard just to say that we stand by the Oscars, because not everyone's perfect, but this is just so obviously bad.
Yep.
And I'm glad that we have watched it now older with a new understanding of the film and with new lenses, because obviously this is bad. Middle school me, obviously not understanding the world to its fullest, is going to go, wow, what a profound film. I could have wrote this, like I said, in middle school and would have the same effect then. It's just bad. Yep. It's bad.
Yep. For those that have seen this film, please, we'd love to hear the other parts. We couldn't get through the whole movie. Please comment below other poignant places where you'd like to make it more apparent to other people on other parts of the movie that you hated. For those that like this movie and defend it, please, we'd like to hear your opinions and perspectives. We don't, discredit people that may like this film. We'd like to hear from you on why you argue that it's valid. Please let us know what you think. Subscribe and comment to this video and to our channel. Ring the bell when you subscribe to get notifications on when we post new videos. Yeah. That's all we got.
Yeah, one Best Picture down. We're going to try doing this at least every other month.
90 more to go?
Yeah, 90 more to go. This, of course, will end up probably in the bottom of our rankings, but we hope to see, finally, let's get some good movies in the palette. There's a lot much better pictures for us to talk about, but we want to talk about something that was modern and has some controversies to it. But
yeah.
Thank you guys for watching. Take care. Bye.